if you pay close enough attention, you may not be suffering in the grosser ways of suffering, which is good, right? But if you say you're not suffering, you mean to say that nothing ever happens that you think should be different? If you pay attention as you go through your day, if you pay attention, you will notice that there are things that happen that your mind says no to. And that's the source of suffering. It's inevitable. You've been conditioned to be that way. Your personality considers that to be necessary for your survival, is to pay attention to things that would threaten you. But the program that it's using to determine what will threaten you, in order for it to be 100% safe, in order for it to be 100% accurate so that you will never make the mistake of not seeing something that's threatening you, right? In cave days, that's the way you wanted to be, right? You wanted to pay attention all the time because something can jump out from behind a bush and eat you, right? So the way that your brain got trained to avoid threat is to consider everything a threat. Then you won't miss a threat. It's a perfect system. Perfect system. But the problem with that is you have to suffer being threatened all the time. You have to suffer being uncomfortable. That's called anxiety or fear or anger or annoyance, putting up with stuff like that, right? So what we're doing is we're retraining the mind and the brain, right? So that you stop seeing everything as a threat. The only way you're going to be able to do that is you have to actually be present and see what's happening instead of only looking at what the mind's doing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand that it's difficult to get the idea that what you want is more than anything is your absence. What you want more than anything is your absence. What you want more than anything is death, because death is your absence, right? But if I could wave a magic wand and everything would keep happening the way it is, right? Except that you wouldn't take yourself to be separate from it, would it still bother you?
No.
It can't. There'd be nobody to be bothered. That's the truth. There is really nobody to be bothered, right? But you've been practicing through your thought process to be somebody that's bothered by thinking that way about everything, right? That's why that statement, if you don't think about it, is anything wrong. That's an axiomatic statement. It's a tautology. It can't be violated. If you look at that, that's your power. Your power is to know that you can move your attention away from the thought process. Because if you're not thinking about it, it can't bother you. If you understand that and you're practicing that, whenever you find yourself being bothered, you move your attention away from the thinking that's happening. And it'll end. It's that easy. It's that simple. You move your attention away. Now, I say it's that easy and it's that simple, but it's not that easy and that simple, right? Because your habit is not to do that. And your habit is not to do that because the system that you take yourself to be believes that if you do that, something's going to eat you. If you do that, you'll be in danger. If you do that, the person that you're feeling angry with, that you want to fight with and be in conflict with, if you do that, they'll be right. And being made wrong is equal to dying to the personality. Equal to dying. If in this class, if you notice, if you bring up a question or a topic, right, and I stop you and I say, wait a minute, don't go any further. You've already got, go back and look at the first part of this. That's where the mistake was made, right? You may notice your mind starts to get upset, right? Because you're starting to feel like you're being made wrong, and you don't look good when you're being made wrong, and you don't like that, right? So the thing the mind does, it'll start generating argumentative ideas. Yeah, but what about this? And how about that, right? Yeah, and if you stay in that and you don't release yourself from that, right, then at any cost you will make me wrong. At any cost you'll make me wrong. And if it's intense enough, right, you won't come back here. You won't come back here. That guy's brainwashing people. That's what happens. That's what happens. That's why you have to be very careful. You have to be very. When you walk into a meditation hall, the first thing that you have to do before you take your seat to practice, when you walk in the door, according to tradition, the first thing you have to do is, that's saying, I am humbling myself to this tradition. I am giving up all my good ideas, I'm giving up all the way I think things should be, and I'm going to have my mind be open to this practice and these teachings. And then you walk to where you're going to sit and meditate, and you stop there, and you bow again. Like that, you know? And if you have a good teacher, like my teacher up there, when chanting time comes, what do you think they chant? The 8 verses of training the mind, because that chant is about understanding that you're not what you take yourself to be. And that's the most important aspect of this teaching. And it's not a belief. It's not a belief that you're not what you take yourself to be. It's the truth that you're not that. It's reality. It's actually real that you're not what you take yourself to be. You're not that. But you have been practicing being that, and everybody else is practicing being that, right? So it's a collective dream. It's a collective state of mind, right? That's what makes it difficult, right? Because your experience of yourself, right, is a collective self, right? That you have an awareness of the collective self of all humanity. That's what Carl Jung, famous psychologist, said. There's a collective self. And you're aware of the collective experience of all humanity, right? And all humanity is dreaming its ass off. All humanity is in the dark, right? So that's what you're dealing with all the time, is that not only your individual belief that you're a self and that you're a personality, but the idea that all of the rest of humanity is, and you're experiencing that reality as well as your own individual reality. So the deck is stacked. The deck is stacked, right? And that's why the practice is so critical, because to understand the teaching isn't good enough. I can tell you from my personal experience, I've understood these teachings since I was a young man, and I spent, after understanding these teachings as a young man with the help of some LSD and some other stuff, right? After understanding that, I went on for another 15 or 20 years suffering because it wasn't making any difference that I knew that stuff. That was worse than when I didn't know it, right? But the thing I didn't understand is that having the teachings and studying the teachings, the personality will say that's good enough, because that's how it learned everything it learned, right? Yeah, but that's not good enough. You have to practice it, because you have to practice undoing the condition you're in that's keeping you from experiencing the way things really are.
Like a total letting go.
Yeah. But it's got to be moment to moment all the time. Moment to moment all the time. Moment to moment all the time. In each and every moment of your life, you have to recognize that it's always here and now. It's always here and now. No matter what's on your watch, it's always here and now. It's always here and now. It's always the same time. And that's what you want to be tuning into all the time. It's here and now. Whenever you're thinking, it's there and then. Whenever you're thinking about the future, it's there and then. Right? But neither one of those things are real. Neither one of those things are true. But your brain has been hypnotized to believe that the movie is real. You know, if you went to the movies and the lights went out and you start watching the movie, right, and you actually believed what you were watching, you would never go back. You would never go back, right? But you're doing that in your everyday life all the time, aren't you? And you can't get out of this. Yeah. You can't just leave the movie, right? You have to deal with it somehow. You will always find yourself back in the same state of mind, in the same ordinary everyday situation. So this is where you want to do the practice. This is where you want to do the practice. You want to practice with your everyday mind and your everyday feelings and your everyday circumstances. If you practice in those circumstances and you're able to get free from identifying yourself as a personality in those circumstances, then you'll be experiencing real freedom. Freedom from having to behave in any particular way, you know, freedom to be present to what's happening and enjoy what's happening because you're present and you're enjoying life happening. without any expectations. It doesn't have to be any particular way. It's just what's happening, and it's always interesting and it's always enjoyable because it has no effect on you. If you understand that, and then you take the very next step, the very next step is this death that you're avoiding as a person, right? Not only do you not have to avoid it, but you can have it happen anytime. You can have it happen at any time and be done with that and move on. Right? Because the death that we're talking about is the death of something that was never in existence in the first place. How many times do I have to say this? Right? Repetition is part of the teaching, right? I have to say it over and over again because you'll keep falling back into the shit over and over again. So I have to try and match how many times you are stupid with intelligence. To match how many times you're ignorant with intelligent statements, right? To try and even it out somewhere, right? Because left in your own devices, and when you walk out of here, you're going to get hit with stupidity. You know, stupidity. Stupidity means the possibility of knowing the truth exists, right? But you're not paying any attention to that. That's stupidity.